Hey everyone, this is Sandeep back with 100 days of coding React and Redux. This is day number 8 and today's topic is really important where I'm going to talk about the state system in React. So let's directly jump into the video. So state system in React. So think of a state as something and this is difficult term actually when we talk about state in React. That's why I have created this simple definition here. Think of a state as something which changes over time. So if you see something in your application which is going to change over time, right? And it has to have some trigger. So it can be based on the user interaction or a network request or a timer. So mostly we don't use timer, but I've still kept it here. So think of a state as something which is going to change over time based on user interaction or network request or timer. It's a good idea, if you compare props versus state together. So we already learned about props in the last video. I think last video was related to CSS, but before that video, the link is in the description, by the way. If you want to watch the entire playlist from the day one, right? The link is in the description. So props versus state. Props are attributes used to configure the component, right? State is a data changes over lifetime of a component. So this gives you a very good comparison. Props are input to the component and state belongs to the component. There is a star, right? And what is the meaning of that star? I'm going to tell you. So state belongs to the component, but sometimes, we can pass state as props also. That's why I have kept that star there. Props are immutable. Now, what is the meaning of immutable? What is the meaning of immutable? So basically, immutable means you can't change the value. Okay, so you shouldn't change them. You can actually change the value, but if you call something as immutable, that means you shouldn't change them. That's the rule. State can be mutable. You can modify state values. So this props versus state comparison, this will give you the idea like how to identify the state in our application. And don't worry, I'm going to have a detailed video about how to define the state for a particular application. We're going to build up the small application also, and that will give you the idea. Now, to create state in React, we use something called a useState hook. Now, you must be thinking, what is the meaning of HOOK hook? Now, hook, you think of a hook like, it's an event which is happening in the React application. So when some event happens, like React knows, okay, now the event has been happened and I need to take some action. That's why React has created this hook system so that React knows, okay, something has happened in the application and based on that action, I need to take another action, something like that. So to create a state in React, we use something called a useState hook, and the useState hook is nothing but a function. If you see here on the right hand side. So we call this function called useState. It's a function where we can pass the initial value or a starting value of your state. So this is the hook function, right? And then in the bracket, we pass the starting or initial value of the state. And what this function returns, it returns two different values. Okay, so this returns two different values which we are destructuring here in the array format. The first one is the state, which is value to be used in the JSX inside your component. And the second is a function to modify the state value, to modify this value. Okay, I know this is difficult, a lot of theory, but this is important, I can tell you. So now we're going to understand this with the application which we are going to build, right? So this is this application. I mean, part of the application we have already made, right? We have already started creating these list of products, right? And if I go back to my application also, you can see, right, we have the app.js inside that. I have this product list where, I'm creating different products. So till now, we have created all of these products as a list. Today, we are going to build this search input. So what is going to happen, So look at this component, the search input component. Just think about it. What is what's gonna change in this component. So I'm going to come to this application, right? And I'm going to type something here, maybe like iPhone, like I'm searching for the iPhone. So this iPhone, this typing of iPhone text, it's the value which is getting changed over time, right? So this is a good candidate for the state in your React component. Then I'm going to click on the search button, which is going to bring the iPhone products here. This could also be the state, right? I mean, the list of the products coming based on the search term. So this can also become the state later on in our application. So this is the component we are going to build today, and we will learn how to create the state in React using the useState function. So initially, like if we take the example of this search input, right? Initially, the search input is going to have the empty value, right? So initially there is no search term. As I type, this search value is going to change, right? So initially I'm going to have the empty value, which is going to get stored inside this state variable. And I'm going to call this set state function as I type into the input. And that's going to change the state value. Let's do it practically. So I'll go back to my code editor and I'm going to create a new component here. So inside my search, let's create the search component. So search.js, and maybe I'll create a function. Search, which is going to get some props maybe, but right now we don't use any props for now. So let's do some, so I just put initial structure, I'm going to export this component. Function search, return search. Now I'm going to render this component as products. So probably I'm going to remove this now. Let's put search here. So first of all, I need to import it. Import search from search, and let's create the search component here. If I save, go back to my application, we see the search here, right? Okay, let's create the search components. First of all, we need to have the input, right? So I'm going to create a form. Let's go semantic. And inside that form, I'll have a input. Type will be text. Okay. And let's have one button also. I'm going to call it search. Let's put some placeholder text. Search for product. Something like this. If I save and go back, you should be able to see the search input and there is a search button. Now I can type something here right now and you can see the value is coming. But when I type the value here, this value is not controlled by React. Okay, so if I want to grab this value, probably I can, if I want to grab this value, I can use something called document.getElementById, and I can give this some ID to this input, maybe search element. Okay, and I can grab this search element and I can have the value, right? But this is not the way we get the values in React. This is completely wrong way of doing things in React, where you're accessing the DOM by yourself. That's why they have created something called a state system. So never ever try to do this in React. There are some cases where we need to access the DOM elements, and we're going to see the example, but this is not the way to grab the value. Any value which you need to pass to server side, or maybe do something with that particular value. Because see, when I'm going to type something inside this search box, right, I want to take that value and pass it on the server side to bring the list of the products related to iPhone. But I'm not going to grab that value using this syntax. Pretty important. Okay. So that's why they have created something called a state system. So we're going to use that state system. So useState is the name of a function. So I'm going to import that function. Import useState from React. And what is the syntax, right? So this is just a normal function. And what will be the initial value of our state, our input? Initially, it's going to be empty, right? Something like this. So let's give that initial value to the function, and it's going to return two different values to me. I should put const here. I think I forgot to put the const. Okay, I'll do that now. Or probably I'll do that later, maybe. Maybe if I can do it quickly, Just going to copy this, paste it here, and I'll change it to const. So these are important things, just to have for a quick reference, kind of notes. Okay, so const. This is going to return the state, the initial state, right? So initially this state is going to get the value of empty string. And I need a function so that I can change that state value. And that function is this function, set state function. But in our case, we are not going to call it state or set state. We are going to call it probably what we are going to call it. I'm going to remove this ID. So we're going to call it term. So we are sending some kind of search term, right? And this I'm going to say set term. Okay, so initially the term, the search term will be empty value, but I'm going to use this set term function to set it to the new value. And once the new value has been set, React is going to re-render this component. This is really, really important. I'm going to repeat it again. When I'm going to change this value, React re-renders the component once again. That's the beauty. That's why they have created this state system, or this hook, or this event-driven system. So if something happens to this state, React knows, okay, I need to re-render the component. So how this value is going to change? This term is going to change. This term is going to change when I'm going to have the onChange event here. So when I'm going to type something inside my input, I'm going to call this function. Here I'm going to get the event object, right? And inside that event object, I'm going to have that value. So let me write a function here. So on term change, I'm going to call this function here. And let's define that function just to show you like how it is working. So we're going to get the event object here. And I'm just going to console.log that e.target. So how to access that value, the input value, we can use e.target.value. So target is input, and it got something called a value, which is the attribute of an input element, HTML element. That's what I'm trying to log here. So let's save. And now if I go back and if I type something, I need to open my developer tools, and we're getting some error. Let me refresh the page. Okay, looking good. So I'm going to type iPhone. See that? Each letter I'm typing, right? When I'm typing each letter, that event, onChange event, is getting triggered. And I'm getting the value IIP, IPH, and so on. So now I'm getting the value, right? I'm going to use this function. This is a function to change the state to set this value. So I'm going to call set term, and I'm going to pass at e.target.value. Okay, so I'm going to save now. And if I go back, refresh my application, and now if I type something, right? I'm setting the state. Okay, but to render that term now, I can see the term is getting rendered, but I'm going to put the value also. So the value will be that term. So this is the entire thing. Okay, so whenever I'm going to call this onChange, it's going to call the onTerm change function, which is going to set the term, which is going to change the value. And once the value is getting changed, the new value will get populated here. I was not sure why it was getting populated before also, but let's try again. So I'm going to type iPhone. So now, okay, let me try refresh. iPhone. So now this value, the value which I'm entering here is controlled by React. It's getting stored inside this state value, which is called a top. Pretty easy, right? So when you think like in your application, so let's have a quick recap. Now you know how to create the state and how to change the state in React. Let's have a quick recap of what we talked about state. So state system in React. Think of a state as something which changes over time based on user interaction or network request or timer. We have compared props versus state. Props are attributes used to configure the component. State is data which changes over lifetime of a component. Props are input to the component. State belongs to the component. Props are immutable. You shouldn't change them. I can't speak. State can be mutable. You can modify the state values. And we have used useState hook. I should say hook to change the state. So this function we call, this is a hook function. We can assign a starting or initial value to our state, which is going to stored inside the state variable. And when we want to change the state, right, we call this function, the function to modify the state value. Okay, cool. So I think this is helpful. There will be more examples coming where, we are going to create the state again and again. That will give you more practice. Keep following this series. I'm putting a lot of effort, making this series so that you learn like a lot of React in more than 100 days, I would say. I mean, I've called it 100 days of coding React and Redux, but there may be more videos around it. Many projects are also coming. With that, I'm going to stop here. I'll see you in the next video where we are going to talk about the next topic. Until then, you take care, goodbye, and thanks for watching the video.